Let me start with a few interesting facts. 90% of Drupal developers believe no other CMS can handle enterprise level of projects as well as Drupal. But if client can make their initial decision about a CMS for their site, they select WordPress with 60% probability because they feel more confident with a platform they've used before. Even if the other CMS options may offer more advanced features. In such case scenario, 55% of Drupal developers are unhappy with utilizing another CMS when their clients insist on it. There is a conflict of interests that raises a lot of questions on the start of the project. How could we select the best CMS for our internet project? How critical is that decision? Who should be in charge of the decision, clients or technical team? And what are the irreversible consequences of this choice? There are a lot of questions that we need to keep in mind. By the way, you may ask me, is it talk about Drupal? No, it's just an example of CMS from my own development experience. Let's deep dive into the topic and start with pet projects. The next interesting fact. 80% of Drupal-focused developers never plan to switch to an alternative CMS for their pet projects, even if Drupal is overkill for such a project. For example, for me, I have a few pet projects. One of them, open source literature, it's some kind of blog informational site, and it's a static site, but it managed with Drupal, and I use Tom static site generator that convert my Drupal site into a static site. And what is the most interesting and fascinating thing for me in Tom model? That we have an ability to save the content in JSON files and store it in Git repository along with configurations, along with a composer file and other stuff. And let me show how it looks like. So the content in the repository looks like a set of JSON files of different entities, and it's just the set of fields for each entity. And let me show. So it's the node, and there is an interesting ability. So we can use this JSON file on the third-party front-end application and take all this information and render on the front end. But from the other side, we don't need Drupal to edit content there. We can just use this GitHub interface and make some edits directly inside JSON files. So we can imagine that we have some other admin tool to edit those files that understand this format, and in that case we don't need Drupal. Now I'm ready to announce the topic. CMS-agnostic pattern and Universal Content Data Model Initiative. Bear with me, I can explain what it means. This is a scheme of monolithic CMS like WordPress, Drupal. Only content workflow is reflected in the figure. I don't want to discuss user management, permissions, and some other mandatory stuff, but you see that everything about the content is inside the CMS. There we can see the content data model. It's the configuration of entities or content types or page types depending on the current CMS terminology. We can have an admin area with create, edit forms, list of available content, and so far. We can have a content repository. It can be text files, database records, and so on. We have some display manager and renderer. And finally, a public part of the site. Next type of CMS is decoupled and headless CMS. There is some difference between those types of CMS, but it doesn't matter for the topic. There you can see that we have exactly the same scheme as in monolithic CMS with only one difference. Instead, the internal renderer, we have an API that gives much more flexibility to handle public part of the application. Actually, we can have a few different applications that fit data from the same endpoints. To get an idea about the next step, we need to chat a bit about users that utilize admin area. There are two common user roles, administrator and editor. The main difference between those user roles is in their regular activity in terms of content management. Administrators can set up different data types and manage fields, so they are in charge for data content model. Editors are in charge for the content, so they mostly work with the content repository. Let's consider a few examples. In the headless contentful CMS, we can have separate parts of the admin area. For example, their content model, and there we can edit different entity types with different fields and set up everything. And we have a separate part for the content editing. And admin users can see both of these tabs, but content editors only the content tab and of course media tab. But what we can see, say, in Drupal. In Drupal, we don't have separated parts of content model and content editing. You can see that for admins, we have a lot of items in the menu, but actually for the content editing we can use only one item, and in that case it's a good example of the anti-pattern that we have when we use the same tool for the admin users and for editors. Let's take a look how it looks for editors. For editors, the admin area of Drupal looks really odd. We have only one item in the admin menu, and there we have ability to edit and add content and handle with files, and that's it. Why we need it? Why it looks so strange? Because the Drupal admin area adopted for admin purpose, and it's the reason. More probably we need to customize editor admin area to make it more convenient for editors. But let's compare it, say, with WordPress admin area. And we can see that WordPress admin area, it's more user-friendly for editors. Let's consider the user story. I want to set up a usual blog with some basic blog functionality. Imagine that there is a public blog data model that covers all my needs. This model. It means that I don't need to reinvent a bicycle. I just need to make my CMS consume those third-party applications and create content in my content repository on the base of that third-party settings. If we have some convenient and widely adopted data model format, we can use any tool that is convenient for us and cover our needs. The only one requirement is the compatibility with that conventional data model format. Let me share with you my initial vision of CMS-agnostic pattern. We can use different third-party content models, such as, say, blog content model, product content model, and also we can extend the existing content model and say with additional fields, and we can have our custom content models in addition to some public content models, and also we can have a few content repositories based on the purpose and permissions. We can have, for example, public content repository for a public site and private content repository that serve for technical documentation and some sensitive information about dealers. And also, as a cherry on the top, we can have a few CMS based on different tasks for different user groups. We can reuse some existing solutions, and different users can have access to different applications, and these different applications can have different access to content repositories. Thus, superadmin can manage user permissions not by some abstract table inside one system like we have in Drupal, but by the permissions to some particular applications that have particular access to different parts of the system. And it's exactly that I called the CMS-agnostic approach. Also should mention that superadmin users can have a separate tool that manage content data model. What is the best format to describe the content model? Should it be JSON or YAML? I don't have answer to that question now. You can get some historical review on the page of the initiative, and the link to that page you can find in the description of the video. But as the bottom line, I didn't find an existing solution that cover even the most simple cases. We need something new. The new approach can be flexible and extendable by new types of fields. We need to base it on the open architecture principle. It requires some work, but there can be benefits in the end of the journey. For example, we can forget about painful migrations from one system to another one if both systems can consume the same format of the content. And so what is the purpose of that talk? I propose you together to develop some kind universal format of content data model and universal format for content data. There are a lot of questions, answers on those we can get together. So I propose you to join those initiatives and together make a next step to the future of content management systems. Under that video you can find a link to the form to join the community and link to the documentation in GitHub repository. In the next video I am going to talk more about the idea of extendability of content data model and show you a simple working prototype that implements that pattern.